Certainly. Here's a straightforward script for the first section. The military base sat at the edge of a barren world, a remote outpost designed for training soldiers from all across the galaxy. Its sky was an endless sheet of dull gray, with biting winds that swept through the camp, kicking up dust from the ground. Here, in the harshest of conditions, soldiers learned to survive. Among them were a group of young recruits, each from different advanced species, each filled with the confidence that their technology and training were unmatched. They trained every day, following strict schedules, pushing their bodies and their minds to prepare for the unknown challenges of future conflicts. Among them sat an older figure, a veteran from countless battles. His body was covered in scars, and his eyes carried the weight of experiences most recruits could hardly imagine. His name was whispered with reverence throughout the camp, but only in quiet tones. The young soldiers knew he was a legend, a relic from a time when wars were fought up close, without the luxury of advanced weapons and automated technology. The veteran often stayed to himself, silently watching as the young recruits trained, working through drills he had once mastered. The recruits saw him as a relic of a different era, one that didn't have the luxury of their advanced technology. They thought his time had passed, and his tales of war were often dismissed as exaggerated old stories meant to make a soldier sound more heroic than they were. It was easier for the recruits to think of him that way, a reminder of a time before their polished machines and advanced armor. One day, after a particularly grueling training exercise, the young recruits found themselves gathered in the barracks, tired and restless. The veteran sat at the far end, his quiet presence seemingly detached from the group. A few of the younger soldiers, nursing bruised egos from the day's drills, exchanged glances. A smirk spread across one recruit's face, and he turned to the veteran. "Hey, old man, why don't you tell us one of your stories? Something to entertain us," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. The others snickered, their eyes now on the veteran. The old warrior looked up, his gaze settling on the group. He wasn't angry. He'd heard this kind of thing before. Youthful arrogance, he thought, it's the same across every species. He slowly rose from his seat, and with a wry smile said, "You want a story, huh? All right, let me tell you about Earth, a place known as a Deathworld." The room fell silent at the mention of a Deathworld. It was a term that carried a weight across the galaxy, a place where life was forged through relentless danger, a place most species would not dare call home. The recruits leaned in, their skepticism replaced by curiosity. They all knew about Deathworlds, and the idea of life thriving on such a hostile planet seemed impossible. The veteran continued, "Earth, that's what they call it. A planet where survival isn't just a choice, it's a necessity every single day. The humans come from there, a species that many of you think are beneath us, primitive, unrefined. But let me tell you, they're survivors in ways you can't even begin to imagine." He paused for a moment, taking in the skeptical faces before him. He could see they still didn't quite understand. Imagine a place where every aspect of nature is designed to challenge you. A planet that shifts from scorching heat to freezing cold in hours. Predators in every corner, from the skies, the land, and the sea. Even the very air can turn against you, storms that rage with enough power to shatter cities. And despite all of this, humans don't just survive. They thrive. One of the recruits, his skepticism still apparent, spoke up. "If it's so dangerous, how did they make it off their own planet? How are they anything more than animals in that chaos?" The veteran chuckled, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "That's exactly what I thought too," he replied. "Until I saw them in action." The room grew even quieter, the recruits now fully invested, the doubt in their expressions beginning to waver. They had heard tales of Deathworlds, but never first-hand accounts from someone who had fought beside a species born from such a place. "They call Earth a Deathworld," the veteran continued, "because life there is forged through constant adversity. But you know what's most interesting about it? The humans, despite all their hardships, carry an indomitable spirit. Their strength isn't in brute force or advanced technology, but in their relentless strive to endure. They adapt, they learn, and most importantly, they never back down. Even when faced with overwhelming odds, they find a way to fight back. It's that spirit that makes them more dangerous than you could imagine. The recruits shifted in their seats, their interest piqued. The veteran's words painted vivid images in their minds. He continued, I remember my first encounter with humans during a conflict on their planet. We were tasked with helping them fend off an invading force, a technologically superior army. Many of my comrades believed we would be the ones to lead them to victory, but what I saw was something entirely different. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes scanning the room, making sure he had their full attention. These humans didn't possess the advanced weaponry we were used to. Their guns looked like antiquated relics, and their armor was nothing compared to what we wore. Yet they fought with an intensity that was unmatched. Their tenacity in the face of destruction was astonishing. The veteran recounted the chaos of the battle, how the alien forces underestimated the humans. We thought they'd run away at the first sign of danger. Instead, they charged into battle with a ferocity that shook the ground. They used guerrilla tactics, exploiting every crevice of the landscape, laying traps and ambushes. Their creativity and resourcefulness were astounding. As he spoke, the veteran described a specific moment during that harrowing conflict, where a small group of human soldiers found themselves outnumbered, surrounded by the enemy. I'll never forget the sight of them. Instead of surrendering, they worked together, communicating without words, anticipating each other's moves. They fought as if their lives depended on it, and they did. It was in that moment I realized how truly fierce they were. They turned what should have been a guaranteed victory for the invaders into a chaotic struggle that left them rattled. The recruits sat in silence, processing the weight of his words. They began to understand that the human strength lay not in their technology, but in their sheer determination and adaptability. Every attack they launched was a gamble. The veteran continued, and somehow, against all odds, they managed to hold their ground. They showed me that it's not always the strongest species that survives, but those who refuse to give up, who find a way to continue fighting no matter the circumstances. He looked around the room, gauging their reactions. Their expressions had shifted from amusement to contemplation. They were beginning to grasp the gravity of what he was sharing. By the end of that battle, the humans had turned the tide. Their unyielding spirit inspired not just their fellow soldiers, but even my own kind. We learned to fight alongside them, to respect them, not for their technology, but for their heart. With each word, the veteran weaved a narrative that pulled the recruits deeper into his experiences. They started to see the veteran continued, so let me take you back to that chaotic battleground. We were all expecting an easy victory, one that would add another feather to our collective cap, but we quickly learned the harsh truth. The humans may not have had advanced weaponry, but they understood their environment better than anyone else. They knew every rock, every tree, every nook and cranny of their land. We were outsiders in a foreign territory, and they used that to their advantage. He paused for a moment, allowing the young recruits to absorb this information. I remember vividly how the humans set up their defenses. They created makeshift barriers from anything they could find, fallen trees, rubble from previous skirmishes, and even old equipment they scavenged from the battlefield. They didn't wait for orders, they acted instinctively, working as a cohesive unit without needing to communicate. I was amazed at their ability to anticipate each other's moves. It was a dance of war that I had never witnessed before, and it was captivating. As the veteran spoke, he could see the realization dawning on the faces of the recruits. They began to understand that humans thrived not only because of their resilience but also due to their unity. When the first wave of the enemy attacked, it was chaos. We were outnumbered, and it looked as if defeat was inevitable. But those human soldiers didn't falter. They fought back with everything they had, and their passion was contagious. Their resolve filled the air with a sense of hope, a conviction that we could prevail, despite the odds. The recruits leaned in closer, captivated by the unfolding narrative. I'll never forget how they adapted on the fly. When a new enemy tactic was employed, they didn't panic. Instead, they quickly recalibrated their strategy. I witnessed one soldier using a simple smoke bomb, a concoction made from everyday materials, to obscure the enemy's vision. While the aliens were disoriented, The humans exploited the moment, launching a surprise counterattack that caught the enemy completely off guard. The veteran chuckled softly, reminiscing about the unpredictability of those moments. And then there was the time they utilized the terrain itself. They led their enemies into a narrow canyon where they had prepared an ambush. As the enemy poured in, the humans unleashed a barrage of guerrilla tactics, rock slides, improvised explosives, and sheer grit. They fought like cornered beasts, using everything at their disposal to gain the upper hand. The enemy had come expecting to claim easy prey, but instead found themselves in a deadly trap. He observed the recruits' eyes widening with excitement. What struck me most was their unwillingness to give up, even when the odds were stacked against them. One human soldier, armed with nothing but a standard rifle, charged forward when we were retreating. He refused to abandon his comrades, shouting orders and rallying them to hold their ground. I watched as he took out 3 of the enemy soldiers before finally being overwhelmed. But he didn't back down until he had done everything he could. That act of bravery ignited a fire within all of us. The veteran's voice softened, tinged with admiration. In that moment, I understood that it was their spirit that defined them. They didn't need advanced technology to fight. They had something far more valuable, the will to survive. Their tenacity was a force of nature, and it made them unpredictable, which is what made them so deadly. Even the most sophisticated alien armies found it challenging to adapt to their unconventional methods. He continued, After the battle, many of us were left in awe of the humans' tenacity. We had come to assist them, but we ended up learning invaluable lessons in courage and determination. The perception of humans began to shift among my peers. No longer were they viewed as a primitive species. Instead, they were recognized as fierce warriors who could hold their own against the most advanced civilizations. The recruits were hanging on to every word, their skepticism fading into respect. The veteran noticed their expressions changing, understanding that they were beginning to grasp the true essence of what made humans formidable. You see, they taught us that it's not always about technology or brute strength. It's about heart and resilience. The humans didn't win every battle, but they fought with a ferocity that left a lasting impact on those who faced them. He shifted in his seat, gathering his thoughts for a moment. When I returned to my people after that campaign, I carried the stories of those human soldiers with me. They became legends among my kind, a testament to what it means to be a warrior. The lessons I learned from them transformed my perspective on strength, bravery, and what it means to fight for one's survival. The veteran's gaze sharpened, and he concluded. So, as you sit here, learning to become soldiers, remember this: true strength lies not in your technology, not in your weapons, but in your spirit. The heart that drives you in battle is what makes a warrior. The humans taught me that, and it's a lesson I hope you will take with you. Never underestimate an opponent, regardless of their appearance or the tools they wield. That's the essence of survival, and it's what separates the true warriors from the rest. The recruits exchanged glances, the weight of his words settling in as they processed the magnitude of what they had just heard. They were no longer just listening to a story. They were absorbing lessons that would shape their understanding of warfare and honor in ways they had never anticipated. In that moment, they began to recognize the legacy of the human spirit, a spirit that could endure and overcome against all odds. The veteran paused for a moment, gauging the impact of his previous tales on the young recruits. He could see their eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration and contemplation. He cleared his throat and continued, "Let me take you back to that battle once more. The moment when everything changed for us and for the humans. It was a chaotic scene, but it was within that chaos that true heroism was revealed." He began recounting the critical moment when the tide of battle shifted. As the enemy forces advanced, their confidence was palpable. They believed they were unstoppable, armed with technology that outmatched anything the humans possessed. But what they didn't realize was that the human spirit was something they could never quantify or predict. The veteran's voice grew more intense as he described the atmosphere on the battlefield. When the enemy breached our lines, I remembered the sound of panic. My comrades and I had fought countless battles, but this was different. We felt a creeping despair. The humans, however, didn't waver. They organized themselves with a fervor that surprised even us. He painted a vivid picture. One squad of humans, about 10 strong, made a quick decision to regroup and fortify a nearby ridge. While we were caught off guard, they managed to establish a defensive position. They utilized every resource they could find: rocks, trees, anything that could provide cover. As the enemy closed in, these soldiers began laying improvised traps, using their environment to level the playing field. They had no advanced machinery, yet they transformed that ridge into a fortress with their ingenuity. The veteran's eyes sparkled with memories as he continued. When the enemy finally came charging up that ridge, they were met with unexpected resistance. The humans used guerrilla tactics, striking quickly and then retreating into the foliage. It was almost poetic how they danced among the trees, elusive and relentless. They had learned to adapt their strategies on the fly, employing everything they had at their disposal to disrupt the enemy's advance. He shifted in his seat, his voice steady but laced with the excitement of battle. One human soldier stood out among the rest, a sergeant named Ramirez. I will never forget him. When the battle seemed lost, he rallied his fellow soldiers, shouting commands that pierced through the din of war. With every word, he ignited a fire in their hearts. It was a sight to behold, soldiers who were ready to give in, now charging forward with renewed vigor. As he spoke, the veteran painted a vivid image in the minds of the recruits. Ramirez led the charge, taking down 3 enemy soldiers with sheer determination. He wielded his rifle like an extension of himself, moving swiftly and fluidly. When the enemy advanced further, he climbed a tree, using the high ground to his advantage. From there, he began picking off targets, a lone sentinel against the tide of destruction. It was a gamble, but it worked. The young soldiers listened intently, captivated by the narrative. And then, as if orchestrated by fate, a human sniper provided cover for Ramirez. She was positioned far off, her keen eyes locked onto the enemy movements. With each pull of the trigger, she eliminated key enemy soldiers, creating openings for the humans to exploit. It was teamwork on a level I had never seen, a synergy forged in the heat of battle. The veteran's voice softened as he reflected on that moment. What struck me the most was the unyielding bond they shared. These humans fought for one another, not for glory or accolades. They fought because they understood that their lives depended on each other. It was that understanding, that commitment, that turned the tide of the battle. He recalled. As the hours dragged on, the enemy forces began to falter. They had not anticipated the resilience of these human soldiers. They were beginning to feel the effects of fatigue and confusion. Our forces, who had been fighting alongside the humans, were equally inspired. We learned to adopt their tactics, to think outside the box, and it became a turning point for us all. The veteran leaned closer to the recruits, his voice growing more serious. When the humans pushed back, it wasn't just a matter of survival, it became a matter of pride. They refused to allow the enemy to take their home, to take away everything they held dear. I witnessed them fighting not just for themselves, but for each other and for the sake of their world. The realization hit me hard. This battle was as much about their spirit as it was about the fight. He could see the recruits absorbing every word. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the battlefield, the humans managed to hold their ground. What had begun as a desperate struggle transformed into a fierce counteroffensive. They pressed forward, their spirits unbroken, their resolve unshaken. It was an incredible sight. And I knew then that we were not just fighting alongside warriors, we were fighting alongside legends. The veteran's tone became more reflective. That day, I learned what true courage looked like. I saw it in the faces of those human soldiers who, despite the odds, rose to the occasion. They didn't just defeat the enemy, they redefined what it meant to fight. They showed us that bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's the will to move forward despite it. He concluded with a somber note. In the end, we emerged victorious, but the victory belonged to the humans. They had taught us valuable lessons that day, lessons about perseverance, unity, and the unwavering spirit of survival. It changed the way we viewed warfare and our own beliefs about strength. We had come to assist them, but we left with a newfound respect, not just for the humans, but for the essence of what it means to be a warrior. The recruits sat in silence, the weight of his words settling in as they reflected on the stories of human resilience and determination. The veteran had painted a vivid picture of heroism, one that would remain etched in their minds as they continued their training. They were no longer just hearing tales. They were understanding the profound impact that the human spirit could have, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. As the veteran observed the faces of the young recruits, he could see their admiration transformed into respect. The room was thick with anticipation as he prepared to impart the final lesson from his tales of Earth and its indomitable warriors. You've heard the stories, the bravery, and the tactics of humans. But let me leave you with the most significant lesson I took away from those battles. It's not just about winning, it's about the spirit behind the fight. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to resonate. The human spirit is what sets them apart. When the dust settled and the last shots were fired, what remained was not just a victory but a legacy built on resilience, adaptability, and the unwavering bond among comrades. They taught us that the strength of a warrior isn't measured by the weapons they wield but by the heart that drives them. The recruits leaned in, captivated by the sincerity in his voice. After that battle, we had a chance to reflect. Many of my comrades returned to our home systems with newfound respect for the human race. No longer did we view them as primitive, we saw them as equals, worthy of admiration and caution. The galaxy is vast, and we are merely a small part of it, but the lessons we learned that day transcended species. We all share the same instinct to survive, and in that instinct lies our greatest strength. The veteran continued, I remember one soldier, a young human named Sarah, who fought alongside us during the final assault. After the battle, she looked around at the devastation and the losses we all suffered. Instead of celebrating their hard-fought victory, she gathered her comrades and insisted on honoring those who had fallen. It wasn't about her, it was about the collective. She recognized that every life lost was a tragedy, a story cut short, and that humility defined her character. He emphasized this point. In moments of victory, the true measure of a warrior is their ability to remember the cost of that victory. Sarah understood that to truly honor those who had fought alongside you, you must acknowledge the pain and sacrifices made. That day, I realized the importance of humility and respect, not just for your enemies but for your comrades as well. The recruits were silent, absorbing the gravity of his message. These lessons became crucial for us moving forward. We incorporated them into our own training, emphasizing teamwork, respect, and understanding. It changed how we viewed our own battles and the warriors we would encounter in the future. We recognized that every species has its strengths and weaknesses, and it's essential to respect those differences. He went on. When you face your next opponent, remember that each combatant has a story, a reason for fighting. Whether it's a human or any other species, understand that they fight for their beliefs, their homes, and their families. We learned to never underestimate an opponent again, regardless of their appearance or technology. That humility can be the difference between life and death. The veteran leaned forward, his voice earnest. As you embark on your own journeys, keep these lessons in your heart. The galaxy is unpredictable, and you will encounter beings you may not understand. Always remember that strength comes from within. When faced with insurmountable odds, it's your spirit that will carry you through. The humans showed us that resilience can conquer any challenge, that unity among comrades can create a force stronger than any weapon. He concluded with a reminder. At the end of the day, it's not the accolades or the victories that define you as a warrior. It's the legacy you leave behind, the impact you have on those around you, and the respect you show to all who fight alongside you. Never forget that. When you lay down your arms and reflect on your journey, may you find pride not just in your triumphs but in the heart and spirit with which you faced every battle. The recruits remained still, each lost in their thoughts, contemplating the weight of the veteran's words. They had come to see him as a relic of the past, but now they understood he was a bearer of wisdom forged in the fires of battle. The stories he shared had transformed their perspective, igniting a new respect for the spirit of humanity and for the warriors who fought against the odds. With a final look around the room, the veteran added, The next time you think of humans, remember they are not just another species. They are survivors, warriors who thrive in the chaos of their death world. They possess an incredible,